Alright gamers, welcome back to Game Master's Dungeon. I am Brian, your Game Master. Today we're going to do another episode of Game Table Talk. Today we're going to look at and review Mutants and Masterminds 3rd edition role-playing game, published by Green Ronin Publishing. It is a D20 based system. For anybody that's ever played like Dungeons and Dragons or D20 Modern, things like that, a lot of it will seem kind of familiar. Obviously, it's Mutants and Masterminds, so it's superheroes, supervillains, superpowers, things like that. If you've ever wanted to play a comic book style game or anything with, you know, superpowered heroes and villains, this is going to be the game for you. But we're going to take a closer look on the inside of the book here in just a second. We'll be right back. Alright gamers, let's start digging into some Mutants and Masterminds 3rd edition. So this is the Hero's Handbook. Obviously, even as a game master, this is really all you need. It's got a section for running the game in the back. I don't really have any of the other physical books. I do have a couple of PDFs that I bought online that I have on my tablet. They have like the Game Master's handbook and stuff like that. But this is just a Hero's Handbook. All you need to start playing, both Heroes and the Game Master. It is designed by Steve Kenson from Green Ronin Publishing. So obviously we got the table of contents. So the first big chapter, right, is the introduction, right? So welcome to Mutants and Masterminds. Talks about what is a role-playing game, like most role-playing games do. The things you're going to need, talking about characters, talking about the Game Master, how to use the book. Alright, the first big chapter, the basics. So as I talked before, this is a D20 game, but the only dice it uses is a D20. It doesn't use the D4, 6, 8, 10s, or 12. Just the 20. Everything's determined off of that. Hits, defenses, damage, all that stuff. We'll talk a little bit about that in later. But the first chapter, basics. So this talks about the core mechanic, right? So basically it's a D20 plus modifiers versus the difficulty class for everything in the game is going to tell you if you succeed or fail. Okay? Talks about the Game Master, what he is and his job. Talks about the heroes. Talks about abilities, skills, advantages, powers, and complications. Some of the big chapters, it kind of just touches on what's going to be in each of those. Oh, so this portion right here. So this page and this portion right here, super important for this game. The one thing, I'm going to talk about one of the cons now, the math that's involved. This is not as bad as 2nd edition. We used to have we had a big board that we had all the charts and measurement guides and everything printed out and like pinned on there. So when we played, we could just quickly reference without having to flip through the book 1,000 times. So you're going to buy ranks in powers and abilities and all this other stuff. So depending upon your rank, it's going to tell you over like ranks -5 through 30 plus, what it all basically roughly equates to. Okay. As an example, one of the ones you're going to use a lot is rank 9. So rank 9, because it goes in mass, time, distance, and volume. So this is for different powers. So say you want to know how fast the average human can maybe walk in an hour. Okay, so rank 9 is a time measurement of 1 hour, 2 miles. So you can walk about 2 miles in an hour at an average pace, right? But now, so I don't want to go in and do a lot of detail because it's probably going to get bored. You're going to be like, oh, I do not want to listen to a math lesson. Let's just quit the video. But basically, this whole section here tells you how to use, so right here, here, and this section and here. Talk about how to use the chart. It can be a little confusing, but you've really got to learn. You got to just go to read this and work with your GM and figure everything out. Take notes, like if you've got super speed or super strength, or you can grow or shrink or increase your mass or affect gravity. it's going to be here. So have those equations already written out and stuff like that. So for easy reference, right? Okay. Talks about gameplay, about making checks. So obviously D20 plus ability versus the difficulty class. Critical success, difficulty class. It's got a couple of charts here for difficulty classes, like very easy. Notice someone in plain sight. Okay. Nigh impossible. Track a trained commando through the jungle on a moonless night after 12 days of rainfall. Right? It's a 40 versus 0. There's some example checks right here. So if you're like, okay, what would this be like? Oh, find clues at a crime scene. Okay, that's about, you know, investigation skill, what it would need, right? This talks about opposed checks, because sometimes, you know, you're facing a villain or you're facing an encounter where your check versus somebody else's check could be the difference of success or failure, right? So this section here covers that. Team checks, if you're working together. Attack checks, resistance checks. So it's not really defense, it's like resistance to the damage. Talks about all the different actions. So they're pretty standard like most D20 games. So standard action, move action, free action, reactions. The different conditions, it kind of briefly goes over there later on in the book. So like stunned, dazed, all that other stuff, confused. It talks about things like that. The basic conditions like compelled, controlled, dazed. Kind of tells you what it means. And then combined conditions, say you're, you know, stunned and weakened. You know, or there's other ones, there's like asleep, blind, deaf, you're dying, entranced, exhausted. It talks about extra effort, which is particular to this game. So say you've got super strength, but it's not strong enough to lift that building or whatever, you can use extra effort. Basically, you could risk, you know, exhausting yourself and hurting yourself to gain temporary, like for that check, extra ranks and whatever skill or whatever. To be able to try to accomplish a feat beyond your means. Talks about hero points. So this game, instead of like you're like level 5 and you go through like your character class, all right, there's no classes. None of that stuff, which is really, really cool about this game. So you get so many hero points. The GM is gonna pick a power level, like a good standard level that goes from 1 to 20. Like, you know, how it goes from level 1 to level 20 in D&D and things like that. And you get so many power point or hero points to build your character with. And then each powers and abilities and feats and all this other stuff cost so many points. And then also there's like disadvantages and things like that can give you extra points. Basically, you know, you could, maybe your character's addicted to cigarettes or alcohol, or maybe he's, you know, I don't know, something. There's a bunch of lists in the back. We'll go over it. But, you know, those kind of things can give you points back. But it's not just to take all the bad stuff to get more points and just be, like, unplayable. But it really helps to, like, flush out a character and make that character more fun. It talks about earning hero points and things like that. So, like, as you go through the game, obviously you're going to want to progress. The GM will award more hero points. And once your hero point total is equal to basically whatever the next level would be. So say we started at 10. Once you get enough to be power level 11, you're power level 11, basically. It doesn't really matter, but it just kind of helps the GM so he's not building power level 20 characters against you. Chapter 2, Secret Origins. This is where the game really starts to take off. So obviously, if you've ever read any comic books, I'm assuming what got you here to this video is maybe you're watching Flash, or you're watching Arrow, or you're Superman, or Superman Dawn of Justice, or maybe you're just in the comic books and you're like, man, I'd really like to play a game based on comic books. Everybody's got their secret origin, right? Spider-Man got bit by a spider. Daredevil had that accident with the chemicals and things like that. This goes over those origins. This is like how to build your character. So it's got your steps. So first thing, you're gonna build your concept of your hero. You're gonna get an idea. Oh, maybe I really want to be like a speedster like Flash, or I want to be like Batman or Wonder Woman or something, right? That's a cool concept. Get your concept in mind. Then you go talk to your game master. he's going to lay out some guidelines. Now, there's some, when we get to the power section, we're going to talk about some powers that should be limited, and it even says so in the book. Hey, you should limit the use of this. Don't let people just run willy-nilly with time manipulation. You know, everybody's going back in time or freezing time. It's just, it gets not fun for the people that don't take it. But we're going to get there later. So GM's going to set guidelines on the kind of powers and what the game is going to be about, and then maybe your concept just doesn't work. It doesn't fit his story and his world. Don't get discouraged, right? Because obviously this world we live in, right? There's some people that just, that exist that have to change or have to kind of blend in with society the way they want to be. Just isn't acceptable, right? If you want to be politically correct, right? Everybody wants to be morally good and all that other stuff, but that's totally not what we're talking about. But obviously, if the GM throws at your concept, hey, this doesn't work for my game, it's gonna cause too many rifts, right? Think of something else. Don't get upset. GM's gonna give you a power level. Then you're gonna start looking at your ability scores. Then you're gonna do your skills, advantages, by your powers, by your complications, fill out your details. Then you're gonna go back to your GM. It's like school, right? They give you a paper to write. You're gonna think. You're gonna write your paper. You're going to proofread it. You're going to second draft it. Now you're going to go back to the GM, and he's going to look at that and approve. Did you spend all the right points? Are you over? Are you under? Does it still fit within his guidelines? Did you take powers that he won't allow, or too many points in powers that he had limits on? Right? So just make sure you write down those limits. Here's a chart of how many power points you're going to get starting out. It gives you this little chart right here gives you the cost and power points for whatever it is you're buying, so like abilities and skills and powers and stuff. It does talk about trade-offs. So you can trade off like parry and will. So maybe your guy isn't as tough, but he's really dexterous, so you could maybe trade off max levels of toughness for more levels of dodge. So like if you can dodge most attacks, but then if you fail one, you're going to get hit really hard, right? Like some people are like those little wiry guys. If they take one hit, they go down, or they take a lot of damage. This covers that, because not everybody is the same level of tough and same level of dodge and the same attack and parry and all that other stuff. So that gives you the ability to play with those minimums and maximums to be able to build a better character. It does give you 4 examples of power levels. So like power level 8, the Masked Adventurers, level 10, superheroes. Level 12 is like big leagues, so like Justice League. 14 is like world protectors, those super powerful heroes and villains. Okay. Reallocating power points. It talks about motivation, choosing complications. Because obviously you want a motivation. Now the rest of this section is all about kind of fleshing out the character. You got the numbers and the stats, but now we want to make a living person. Like what makes them tick? Like what do they think about? Why are they, rescuing cats out of trees? Or why is he trying to take over the world? Or, bring it to ruin? This is going to kind of help you figure that out. Okay. Let's keep going. Let's get on. The background. Here we go. So it's got origin, powers, themes, all this stuff, right? So you got your origin. So like, was it an accident? Are you an alien? Were you endowed by mystical means or magic? Were you an experiment? Were you a mutant? Was it just training? Maybe you're like Batman. He doesn't have any superpowers. He's not super fast, not super strong. He doesn't heal quick. It's all about training. He trains every day. Obviously, he's got the money, but it's training, like Arrow or like Green Arrow, right? He's got some tech and he's got his training and his wits. That's it. Talks about age, like how old is your character? Are you like 5 years old? Are you 100 years old? That kind of thing. Talk about your appearance. Talk about your costume. That really all depends upon if the GM is going like a costume thing or is everybody running around in their pajamas, Not everybody's going to want a costume. Maybe they just, like some of the pictures are kind of cool. like the princess character. I'll show a better picture of her. She's just got blue jeans, this pink shirt with the rhinestones that says princess, and some sneakers. She's like super strong, super tough. It's pretty cool. Here are some examples of like pre-built characters. You're like, oh, well, I can't really think. Maybe I want to be like Iron Man. So you'll go to the battle suit. It's already got some powers and everything laid out. Got a power level. You know, you can just take this template, make a few adjustments, put a name on it, you're done. Okay? So this got like the battle suit, the construct, so like Ultron, the crime fighter, so this is obviously like a Batman type character. So it's got, you know, it's got like boomerangs, he's got all these, you know, different tools and stuff that he uses. You've got the energy controller, so like fire or ice, or, you know, like Iceman or Firestar, or, you know, Firestorm, stuff like that. You've got the Gadgeteer, which is different from Batman would be the crime fighter. The Gadgeteer, let's see, he's got like force shield, jetpacks, maybe like a Booster Gold kind of character. You got the martial artist, so maybe he's like, honestly, I always think Ryu when I see this guy Ryu from Street Fighter, or even like Iron Fist. Obviously, you could add a little bit to make it more Iron Fist, like the mystical powers that he's got, which is perfectly fine. You've got the Mimic. He's got garbage stats everywhere, but his only power is Mimic, where he's able to basically mimic anybody else and take. So, oh, I'm going to mimic the martial artist. Well, now I use his template instead. We've got the Mystic. So this is obviously a throw. Just look at it. That's totally Doctor Strange, if you've ever seen it. The next guy, you've got the Paragon. So this is like totally like Superman. You know, so he's high toughness, high strength, speed, shoots laser beams, same stuff, right? You got the Powerhouse. So like, he's a big green army guy. So like the Hulk, things like that. You've got the Psychic. So maybe like Jean Grey, Professor X kind of thing. You got the Shapeshifter. So like Beast Boy. The Speedster, Flash, Zoom, Reverse Flash, you know. You've got, this is like the Warrior. Trying to think of who. Obviously, he looks like Aquaman, to be honest, but he doesn't have SpongeBob powers. I mean, sorry, he doesn't have Aquaman's powers. I'm not a big Aquaman fan. Obviously, we're not here to rant about who we do and don't like, but I'm just not a big Aquaman fan. He's like SpongeBob. We do have the Weapon Master, you know, so he's master of like all kinds of swords and weapons and all the other stuff, you know. So you've got a lot of different templates to look at. You're like, maybe you got a concept. You're like, man, I'm really thinking about energy controller. How would I build that? You could use this as a guide. These couple of pages, so this guy builds a crime fighter. It goes through step by step on what he buys and how he does it, and like how he fills it all in, so you can kind of see as an example, because it is pretty complex. Now, obviously, so here's what I'm talking about, the princess. I see, super cool, like not a really crazy costume. The same thing, right? How she builds her. All right, chapter 3 is your abilities. So the abilities, if you've played any kind of other D20 games, so you've got strength, stamina, agility, dexterity, but then you got fighting, intelligence, awareness. Yep. What is it? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have 8 abilities that you have to put points into. Don't neglect, like, don't just put 1s in everything. I mean, you could put 0. Like, 0 is just like average. But don't be afraid to put a few points into these, because they just give you straight bonuses to like ability checks and stuff like that. If you rely on your powers and other stuff, like what if you get into a spot where you can't use your powers, somebody's got a null field, or you lose your powers or something based on a story plot, well, now you're like garbage stats, right? So make sure you put some in here to kind of help fill out your character. This talks about initiative, defense ranking, resistance checks. Next chapter talks about skills. A lot of skills are similar to, like, you know, the other D20 games, so Dungeons and Dragons, acrobatics, athletics. So close combat, ranged combat are skills now. So like if you want to punch somebody, you use your close combat skill. You want to throw a weapon or an energy beam, you use your ranged combat skill to determine if you hit or miss. Okay, which is kind of cool. Instead of, because there's no base attack bonus, there's none of this stuff. You don't add your strength to your hit. Well, it is based off of dexterity. And then you can use them untrained and stuff like that. But then it just goes through and talks about all the different abilities, what they mean, like close combat. Let's see. Yeah, you're trained with a particular type of close combat attack, giving you a bonus to your attack check with it equal to your skill rank. You'll say I've got close combat fist, you know, or like unarmed or whatever, my hands and my feet. Boom. You have to pick a specialty with it. Yeah, so hero might have close combat swords, but close combat melee weapons is too broad. Close combat unarmed is an option, meaning skill with unarmed strikes like punches and kicks. However, this bonus does not apply to other forms of unarmed combat maneuvers, including but not limited to grappling and tripping. All right, so you got to make sure you read that. Okay. Same with the ranged combat as well. So ranged combat, you know, guns. But firearms is, I think firearms is just too broad. Let's read it. B, Q, R, B. Ranged combat. So a hero might have ranged combat guns or ranged combat fire control. But ranged combat powers is too broad. Ranged combat throwing is an option and includes both thrown weapons and objects a character simply picks up and throws, like a car or a truck or whatever. Technology, treatment, vehicles, that kind of stuff. Now we're on to advantages. Advantages are a lot like feats from Dungeons and Dragons. So this is like you don't just get X amount of feats, right? You have to purchase them. I think it's one power point per advantage rank. So some will say either you just buy them once and that's it. Some will tell you if they're multiple ranks. Like a good one of multiple ranks is improved initiative. Like for every rank you buy, or like here, so like days. It's a skill ranked, you can buy it twice. You buy it once, you get certain ability. The second part of this, if you buy the second point, you get the rest of it. Defensive roll is ranked with no limit. Obviously, it's the amount of defensive roll bonuses you can have is based on the power level. Because depending upon the power level, you can't just put like 50 points in defense and just be unhittable or undamageable, right? There's limits to how high your certain stats can be based on your power level. Okay? All right, here we go. The power section. It's the biggest section, like if you look at it, right? It's like, so from page 91 to 156. So 60 pages of powers. Now, the one thing I do like about this game the most is that it allows you to build almost any kind of hero, comic books, movies, all that stuff that you can think of, because a lot of the powers are just general. Like, let's look at it. Maybe. Here's a list of like all the different powers, like as a list just for like quick reference, and it tells you like how many points per rank, because they're not all equal. Like as an example, communication is 4 points per rank, but burrowing is only 1 point per rank. Okay? So there's like powers like affliction. So you impose some debilitating condition or conditions on the target. So there's no like poison attack, but it's affliction. So you may, maybe you disintegrate people when you touch them, or you afflict them with the plague, you know. So like you have to look at what conditions, like maybe you make them exhausted, or maybe you stun people when you touch them, or put them to sleep or something, right? That's that power, okay? And also it's got a section for extras. So there's like, let's get a good power. This section there's a lot. You could talk all day about powers. This is just going to be a quick overview. So like, let's look at burrowing again. Okay, obviously, so you can burrow through the ground, leaving a tunnel behind you if you choose. Okay, extras are like extra things you can add onto the power. You could buy ranks But then, so say penetrating, normally the hardness of the ground affects only the speed at which you can burrow. At the GM's discretion, some super hard materials may be considered impervious to burrowing, in which case this extra allows you to dig through them. So say, obviously, maybe like a concrete bunker. Maybe you can dig through the earth, but you can't do concrete. If you take penetrating, you can burrow through concrete, you can burrow through steel and stuff like that. Ranged is an extra. This extra either allows you to create tunnels at a greater distance without having to be at the end point of the tunnel as it forms, or in conjunction with affects others, allowing you to grant the burrowing effect to someone else at a distance. Doing both requires 2 applications of this extra, right? And then these little, these kind of boxes here talks about alternate form. Well, so this one talks about alternate form, because right here is what these are going to mean. This is a sample power, and then it talks about, so as an example, where is it? So alternate form, it's not on the list. Okay, not on the list. Alternate form. So this, because these kind of give you a little more specific based. So say you have a steel form, or you're a liquid, you turn into water, you turn into shadow, you turn into a little swarm of bugs, right? It talks about how to build it and the powers to take to make that effect. Okay. So obviously we can skip all the way to the end of the powers. There's a ton. There's speed, there's strength, there's all this kind of stuff. There's magic, which is really crazy. You just take points in magic, which gives you more points to spend to buy other powers that act like spells. So instead of blasts, which is maybe energy blast or fire blast or something, it's magical bolts, or whatever, right? So it's really, really cool where you take general powers and you customize them to make them very specific. So 2 people could buy 2 of the same power, but how they detail them and what they name them and how they build them, 2 totally different powers in the end. It's the same base power, but its effect is different. Okay? So we got modifiers to your powers. So there's affects others, affects objects. Because there's some stuff that doesn't affect objects, some stuff that doesn't affect others, only yourself, but you can make it affect others. You can give it an alternate effect, right? This section, it can be really confusing. So you've really got to read your powers, read what you want to do, work with your GM. Don't go home, build this character, and come back, bam, ready. GM might look at this and be like, what is this, right? So work with your GM. If you are a GM and you're looking to run this game, maybe just, what I like to do, sit my players down one at a time, and I will build their character with them. So, because I have a pretty good understanding. Obviously, it's been a while since we played. I've been thinking about running another one. I'm still kind of on the fence about it, but I've read through the book several times. We played a lot of it, the different editions started in the beginning of the 2nd. We played in the 3rd. If a new edition comes out, we'll play it as well. So you got all your different modifiers to kind of tweak your power and change your power. You've got flaws. So a good one is let's see, where's one of the good flaws? I'm trying to think of a character that I played. A good example of the Hulk, right? You'd have alternate form, Hulk or whatever, and then you would buy all the powers that the alternate form would have. But then a flaw would you would take activation, only when you're mad or sad or whatever, or in sunlight, or if you get hit with gamma waves or whatever, You could set activations as a restriction on when the power can be used, and then it gives you either gives you a flat amount of points decrease, or it decreases the cost per level. So say you go back to communication, which is 4 points per level, you take, say you say a check required, it gives you a -1 point per rank, so now it's 3 points per rank. You have limitations on how you can use the power. You can't just use it willy-nilly, but now you've got to make checks, but it's cheaper, which gives you points back that you can put into other powers that fit into your concept. Alright, Chapter 7 is Gear and Gadgets. So this is like the weapons, the vehicles, jury-rigging devices, got all kinds of rules. General equipment like gas mask, survival gear. Melee weapons, ranged weapons, armor, vehicles. Like crazy, like space vehicles, special vehicles, air vehicles. All this kind of stuff. So it gives you a lot of different stuff to use based on like when your game is set. Maybe like in the Silver Age of comics, the Golden Age of comics, the current age, maybe you're playing New 52 kind of style from DC. You know, it's got all the different stuff available to be able to play in those different time periods as well. This one is action and adventure. So basically this is kind of like the how to play the game, like how to take in your turn, the different challenges. So like obviously like poison, so it talks about poison, the different conditions like radiation, disease, falling, things like that. Conflicts, like how to fight. It's even got a cool couple of page like a game example, like a couple of turns of game examples, so you can kind of see how the game is played. This talks about range, concealment, cover, all that stuff. Maneuvers, the different actions you can take. Lasting injuries and death, power attacks, right? All that stuff. Chapter 9 is your game mastering. So this talks about running the game, building encounters, more on difficulty classes and condition modifiers, resistance checks, maintaining game balance. There's a big, huge section. Talk about unbalanced heroes, saying no to your players, like giving somebody, like if we go back to powers right quick, where's time manipulation, time control? I forget exactly what they call it. Teleport. There's super speed. They might have even done away with it. Or it's in here somewhere. I forget exactly what it's called. But they used, and then the last edition there was like time manipulation, where you could just like stop time. There was like no check required, just stop time, everything around you. You couldn't affect anything, but we had a guy that would like stop time, and then he had create power, where he could just create objects out of nothing. Just create a bunch of hand grenades and lay them all over the boss, and then start time, and the boss would just blow up. So you can see like saying no to certain powers, right? But it also talks about saying yes. Like if a player has really good ideas that will work, say yes. You know, don't be so no all the time. Talks about making mistakes, like it's gonna happen. Lost in Transition section talks about defeat and capture, like different types of games, like escaping villains, guest heroes, lethality, you know, things like that. You know, don't always have the hero show up and win, right? That's boring. Read some comic books, watch some, you know, maybe watch Flash, watch Arrow, watch Superman movies, watch Marvel movies, right? Look at some of the stuff that happens in there. You know, take that, put it into your game if you like it. All right, so the wrap up, and then it talks about awards at the end of the game session. Outline the plot. Awarding PowerPoints, talks about equipment and fame. Creating a series, like a campaign, talks about that. It talks about the scale, like if it's local, regional, if it's the multiverse. You know, if it is in the setting, is it historical? Is it modern? Is it a futuristic? Your style, is it light? Is it dark, like Batman? Superman? You know, light would be like some of the stuff from like, maybe like 2000, like early 2000s. Even some of the stuff now, some comics are kind of light, like there's no blood, no gore, no death, no that stuff, right? You just, the villain shows up, haha, heroes come up, haha, punch him in the face, game over, you know, but then you get in like the dark section where there's like people die and stuff explodes and mass death and horror that the heroes have to deal with and stop. Grayscale is kind of like in between. series framework. And then this is supporting characters, so it gives you like civilians, like if you need quick NPCs, like police chief or government agents, SWAT officers, criminals, gang leaders, crime lords, that kind of stuff. Animals. Then you got your glossary here in the back, so if you got some conditions or words you need to look up that the game references, right, you can go here. Like as an example, transformed, what exactly does that mean? Gives you a little synopsis. Gives you more cool charts. So this is your reference chart of damage resistance matrix. Obviously I'm not going to talk about it because you're going to want to get the book and look. It's going to reference this. So basically it's the check result, and then the damage bonus, and then the color determines what happens. Alright, check result of 17 with a damage bonus of 10. Where is that? It is green. So you take a -1 penalty to all your checks. So basically the game doesn't do hit points, doesn't do hit boxes. It just, you take penalties, you keep taking -1 penalties until you become incapacitated. Because as you start taking checks to resist damage, your -1 penalties keep reducing that and reducing that. Eventually you just become incapacitated. So it's pretty easy to track. But if you got like a tough character, you could take 20 penalties or whatever and still keep going. So your measurements, scale as well, right? This is back here again, your size modifiers, then the general licensing, and then the index in the end. Got your character sheet. It's just single-sided. Obviously, you can go online. I think the Green Ronin, they have like a dual sheet that's got more stuff on it if you need to. And then the back cover. Okay. So that's a quick look through of the Hero's Handbook for Mutants and Masterminds 3rd edition. Okay, let's look at the pros. Superheroes. You can build almost any hero, any villain, anything you need, like that kind of stuff. You can use just this book. You can play the entire game, GM and characters, right? Okay. It's relatively cheap and it's thin. It's not a lot of rules. Okay. Well, it's not a big, huge, thick book. Like some of the other books that are like 500 pages or whatever. You can get it online relatively cheap. It's great. It's got some great art to it. The game is, obviously, for those of you that have played 2nd edition, going to 3rd, it's a lot more streamlined and condensed. It's not near as complex as before. But now let's look at cons. Math. There's a lot of math you still have to do. You've got to do a lot of like chart lookups. It's not near as bad as it used to be. But obviously, once you get the hang of how the chart works, it's just easy. You're like, okay, this one plus this gives me this. Okay, I move this fast, or I fly this far, I throw it this far. So, but just getting into the game and learning all the math. Okay. I'm trying to think of what else is really a con. That's really the only con for me, personally. Other than that, I think the game is great. I love being able to play superheroes. I love, because I really like to build like cinematic kind of games where it's like, crazy people running up walls and flying around and throwing buildings and all this other stuff. Like, it's really cool. If that's the kind of game you want to play, like, this is the book for you. So, for Here in the Dungeon, we give it thumbs up. Like, I definitely recommend this game. I would get it, play it if you like superheroes. Honestly, you could even use it for not superheroes. You want to play something else similar where you would need access to certain powers. Maybe like a... what else would you use it for? Obviously, you could use it for maybe you want to do like a mech-based game, like Robotech or something. Like you could build giant robots and give them powers and things like that affect like the battlesuit kind of rules, but make it on a large scale. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do with it. It's really open-ended. It's easy to use with just the 1d20 determines everything. It's not like 50, 60 dice you've got to roll. But we give it a thumbs up, so definitely check it out. Okay, so remember to like, comment, and subscribe down below. Share with your friends if you like this video and you're like, hey man, this would be a really cool game we should get into. Share that. Send it to, send them a link. Get them over here. Let's look at this. Let them hear what I've got to say. Leave some comments down there if you got some other comments about it. Maybe you have more cons or more pros, right? I'd really like to see it. Let's talk about the game. Visit us at facebook.com/GameMastersDungeon for new updates on all the different stuff that I'm doing. So terrain building, my 40K, 30K, role-playing, all that kind of stuff is going to be over there. You can leave some comments and messages and stuff over there. But until next time, we will see you again in the Game Master's Dungeon. Happy gaming.